Facing challenges and overcoming setbacks is part of doing business. Whether you have the expertise to survive them or not could mean the difference between success or failure. Welcome to We Are Women, featuring revealing conversations that provide invaluable insights into the success secrets of female masterminds. A must listen for every entrepreneurial woman. Now here's your host, Janeen Vosper.
Hi, it's Janeen Vosper here, and welcome to this episode of the We Are Women podcast. I am very excited with my guest today. I was presenting at an event the other day, and I also got to hear Tracy Horton speak and was just blown away by the information that she had to share. So I had to get her on this podcast as quickly as possible. Now, Tracy is a seasoned public speaker and an author, and she is a qualified business coach. Tracy owns and operates her own business management company, and she's done that for 25 years. And she specializes in creating business KPIs that ensure the highest profit returns. I think that's something we all want to know how to do. It's one thing being in business, it's another thing actually making a profit on what you're doing. And Tracy is a people person. That's what really engaged me. It wasn't just all about the finances. It was that Tracy is so much a people person as well, and gets into that every business starts with a dream. But dreams take work and money to end up to where they are so that you can actually have that lifestyle that you dream of as well. Now, this is her genius. And as a down-to-earth woman who prides herself in authenticity and professionalism, she gets her clients. So she doesn't get them, she actually gets them, which is such an important factor as well, and delivers from them the results that they dream of, which is a brilliant skill to have. Welcome, Tracy.
Hey, Janeen, thanks for having me.
Oh, most welcome. As I said, when I heard you speak the other day, I thought, this is such a valuable topic, that knowing how to not just have a business, but how to have a successful business and make a profit as well. Because I think that most people that I know that I work with, they get so caught up in what they're doing on a daily basis that they forget the business side of it. Is that what you find?
I do find that, and I find, Janeen, everything I teach I've learnt. So, failure is a very good mentor for me. I like to fail once. That's what I always say to people. It's okay to fail once. And what I find is that women are predisposed to creating and formulating incredible visions and dreams and businesses, but the logistics of supporting themselves financially behind that is often a little lost.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I come across that every day of the week with the people that I work with, and it's such a vital part of business. If you don't make a profit, then you haven't really got a business. You've got a hobby, haven't you?
Absolutely, and you don't have a business that can sustain the dream, because it's never about finding people that don't want to do business, that don't know what they want to do in business, but often it's helping them to understand, well, you have to actually earn more, keep more, do more with your money to actually have that and have it long term.
I love that. Earn more, keep more,
do more with it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we want to be able to do, is do more with it, isn't it? Whether it's investing back in the business or whether it's start living that lifestyle that you want. Tracy, have you always been through this financial part, or sort of what got you doing this? You've been doing it for 25 years, obviously it's a long time, but at some stage there must have been something that went, this is where I need to be.
Actually, Janeen, the story is quite an unusual one, because I came from an extremely broken home, and my father was a schizophrenic. He had 5 personalities. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. Domestic violence and sexual abuse was part of my life from a very, very young age. And when I got to school, I found education was a real level playing field for me. I found that how I dressed, how I looked, how poor I was, none of that really mattered. And I found a real simplicity in understanding figures, finances, and by the time I was in high school, economics and accounting were just my favourite subjects. So I kind of fell into it as a bit of an escapism, actually, because I was so broken at the time as a young teenager. And it was really logical sense for me. It didn't require me to process how I felt because I didn't know how I felt. I was so broken at that time. And so it just became a real natural thing. And then I was lucky to actually walk out of school into a really great job. And I had to leave school quite early because my mum had a breakdown and I had to support our family. And I went into a job and I learnt very quickly how to turn energy and education into money. And from there it just became a passion of mine. And now I just really love helping women to understand it because I think when you have money, you have empowerment. And I don't know a woman alive who, when she isn't empowered, isn't a better version of herself and doing more in the world.
No, that's a really strong statement. When you have money, you have empowerment. And it does make a difference, doesn't it? Just before we came on, I was telling you about this centre that I was at today, and there was a graduation of women who, some had gone through DV, others had just lacked belief in themselves. Just they'd got so low, and they're wonderful that their psychologists and psychiatrists or their doctors had recommended this particular program. And what I saw this morning were empowered women, and they then had now the tools to have that empowerment. And having that then on another level where you've got the financial resources to be able to make a decision, and if you wish to purchase something, then you can just do that. That's another level again. But to feel empowered it really hit home with me this morning with the stories I heard with these women, that's all they wanted was just to feel empowered. So it's such a strong concept, isn't it? And money certainly helps with that.
For sure. And Janeen, I think it's built into a woman's psyche to empower people and to empower others because we are born with this DNA to create and to house life and to bring forth. And so, being able to just have excess funds in your business that you can then allocate to changing other people's lives. In the natural, I help my daughters quite a lot. And that's a beautiful time for me because they're all young mums. I've got a daughter who spends a lot of money on medication for her autistic son, and we're able to help with that. And those are highlights for women because we're not these hard, cold, logical thinking people. We're really emotive. And I think being able to attach stories to our money actually enables us to be better stewards of it and do better with it.
And that's one of the things that I've had a belief, all the way through my working career, is that if I am physically well, if I am emotionally and mentally well, and I have the financial resources, meaning that I have to prioritize myself, and then I can be the rock for other people and the support for other people. But without those components, you can't help others if you're not able to have those resources yourself.
No.
Can you? So you actually devalue, you're disempowering yourself by not putting yourself first.
I'm just about to take off in a couple of days to go to London. I've been doing a lot of travelling in the last 2 years, and just as I do, sitting in a plane, the first thing they do is that emergency safety check. And they always talk about putting the mask on yourself. And I always am amazed at that point because I look around and I can see every woman struggling with that concept that's holding a baby or travelling with children. I often travel with myself or with clients that are my age, and so it's a pretty easy done deal for me. If that's coming down, I'm taking care of myself. But it is an interesting concept that the women around me that are holding children and stuff, I can tell they're not going to do that. They're going to help somebody else first. And I love that about women, but if we translate that into business, it's not a steady foundation for longevity. It's not a steady foundation for wealth. We do have to prioritise ourselves and our own business first.
Yes. And so how do we do that? How do you get your clients to do that, Tracy?
I teach them about the value of money, and I teach them about what money should do. and I teach them about how to understand, because here's the thing, you only earn a certain amount. Everybody earns a certain amount. Some people earn millions, some people earn thousands, some people earn hundreds, some people earn tens, but it's always an amount. It's a finite amount. And that amount has to do certain things. It has to pay taxes, it has to pay profits, it has to reinvent whatever your resource or your product is, and it has to create wealth. It has to be able to not only pay all the bills, but it has to be able to put some money aside. And the education of knowing what that's worth and what that costs, because most people that are struggling, not making money, it is either the fact they are undercharging or overspending in the admin overheads area. And if you can understand that stuff, you can actually help yourself really fast.
Yeah, and it sounds simple, but it isn't simple, isn't it? So we just don't, we don't want, if we don't earn enough, then we can't spend it. But that doesn't work. For a lot of people, does it? Even though it's as simple as it sounds.
Money has such a high content in our culture of being, something that's really exposing. It's got quite an intimate connection in our culture. If you and I were to have coffee and tell each other what we earned, it would define our relationship at a very different level. So it's something we often hold to ourselves. And I think that when you can, especially as women, when you can engage somebody to just pop in and help you, or to learn the stuff that I'm teaching, is to how to look at it and actually read it and comprehend what it is saying, then you can actually take a lot of emotion out of it and just be really pragmatic. Because the fact of the matter is, you can have everything you want, you just have to work for it. And if you've got a perfect product that takes off overnight, then maybe it's only going to take a year. But in 98% of businesses in Australia, it'll take you 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point as well, because a lot of people get frustrated and disappointed when they don't believe that they're achieving and having the success, like an overnight success, and we know how far and few those are between. And it does take time. It really takes time to build up business and to build up the resources in the business as well.
And Janeen, I just want to knock over a little sacred cow here right now. The reality is your business can't sustain you immediately, and a lot of people start a business expecting that it can. But a new business takes actually 12 months to sustain itself. So if you're going to go into business and you need to draw a wage of $80,000 because that's what you were on, you're going to really be struggling to still be in business 3 years down the track, because your business actually needs to keep all the profits and pay you nothing for 12 months to become a viable business that can then pay you for the rest of your life.
And that makes a lot of sense. When I started my business, I was working full-time as a GM, and then started doing the training on the side, and then after a few years, went into a 5-day fortnight in that role, and so I could invest a lot more time into it. So it was a much slower building process than it would have been, but it meant that you had and I can't think there's a terminology for that money that I absolutely love, and I can't think what that is now. It might come to me, but it's that backup money, and it's, at some stage you've got to jump. But for me, I had a great job I loved and got paid well, but I still wanted to create. And going into the 5-day fortnight was brilliant, because it meant that I could put a lot more time and effort into what I do. And now I do work full time in my business and retired from that other position. But it can be scary letting go of the job and starting the business when what you said is an actual fact that it won't sustain you for 12 months.
Sure. And, the way you did it is perfect. And I get a lot of people don't have that opportunity. But if you can, that's a really great example of how to do it logistically well. Because unless you're buying a business, unless you and I walk down the road and buy a muffin break together that's already got goodwill and collateral and can produce an income, most women are starting a dream. And that dream actually takes 12 months to get legs. And as you and I both know, it takes 12 months for people to know and trust you. So, for you to have gone down to that 5-day weekend, you were building all that credibility and all that trust and momentum so that it could sustain you when you did the jump. For me, I have a business that I've been running for 30 years, so it can sustain now. I have also a not-for-profit that I run and another couple of things that I'm sort of playing around with, but they're all sustained because I have this longevity business that creates a very viable income.
Yeah, and that it is tough. I've got a couple of clients at the moment, and one of them's saying, "Look, I think I'm going to have to go back and get a job for a while," and so they've actually stopped the training, which I thought. Well, I felt it's absolutely crazy because they'll still be in 6 months' time when the contract runs out. They'll be back to where they are now without any more resources than what they've got at this particular time. So their situation isn't going to be any different. But I understand the fear that comes in and not having the income, especially when they're supporting themselves.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of women are. The fact of the matter is you and I have to go out today and put fuel in our car, buy groceries, pay the people that work for us, and fund our utilities and our mortgages. We've all got to spend money. And in Australia, our bartering is done by legal tender, by money. We can't do it by just love or affection or anything like that. We have to use money. So that is why I'm so passionate about people understanding how to utilise it, because I think, for women that get to that point where they feel like they've got to go back to work, I always have to ask, what are they doing with it and how are they spending it? Because they're probably supporting their dream in advance. They're probably doing things in advance that they don't need to do. They probably need to be just doubling down on some other stuff, like getting the right training and the right support and the right access to whatever it is they're doing. If you're selling a product, the best thing you can do these days is put money into an online store, because obviously most of us shop online.
Yes, you wouldn't invest in bricks and mortar now. It's a totally different situation unless it is, something like your muffin break or your coffee shop. But even those type of workplace in shops are struggling as well, as most bricks and mortar are. Yes, and once you set it up, and I listened to a lady speak today, and she had gone through a lot of heartache and drama, but she said that about 10 years ago, she'd set up an online business with environmental products, and had just been ticking away, and now she's in the right emotional and mental space to actually really make a go of the business. But it's just been sitting there all that time and doing a little bit. And I thought, that is great that she just didn't say, right, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't do that. But she kept it there, and now she's ready and able and available to step into it. And I thought, that's clever.
That's incredible. Well. Yeah, well done to her. Well done to her.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. Well, someone told me years ago, and I've used this as a lot when I'm deciding what I'm going to spend on something, especially it's a bit different now. I don't get paid an hourly rate, but when I used to get paid an hourly rate, I would think, am I prepared to exchange 5 hours to buy that dress, or am I prepared to exchange 2 weeks' work to go on a long weekend somewhere? And that's how I've done that for a long time now, is ask myself, am I prepared to put that work in to get that? And usually I like spending things, so usually the answer is yes, but I am prepared to put the work in.
Yeah.
Have you come across that before? It just, yeah. Do you find that valuable for people who actually spend too much?
Yeah, I do. And I have a girlfriend, and I've learned so much from her. She is a multi-millionaire. The woman is retired at 60 with literal millions in the bank, and, they own a helicopter just for fun. They're those people. And whenever I shop with her, I'm always blown away at how she weighs up the cost of something, because she's literally a woman who wouldn't have to think like that. So we would go in and look at an outfit
Mm-hmm.
because we're both going to an event or something, and she would say, I don't know if it's worth $195. And in her scheme of things, in her bank account, that $195 would be like $19 to most people. And so I'm always keen to learn from people. And I sat her down one day and I said to her, why are you like that? And she said, because everything is finite, Tracy, and having it doesn't mean you should spend it. You should always respect money and buy what you want for when you want, because otherwise you're never going to have the money when you really want something big. And
yeah, I like that line. Having it doesn't mean you should always spend it. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of us can learn, isn't it? Just because the money's in the bank. I know.
Sure.
I particularly, and I don't want to group a group of people together, but I know with millennials and the Gen Ys and X's, they tend to have more higher spending habits than, say, the baby boomers as well.
Yeah, they do. And, I've raised 4 millennials, and it disappointed me every time when they would turn 18 and leave school. And the first letter they would get would be to get their license. The second letter was a credit card offer from one of the big 4 banks. And I think to myself, if those girls weren't living in my home, if they had not been raised by parents who ran a business management company and dealt with money every day, they would already be in debt under 30 years of age. And I just think people have got to get savvy about this stuff because it's just crippling. It's just crippling.
And we do, because money, I mean, every time you turn on TV, any sort of, but they're talking about the problems about money, aren't they? How things are costing so much more now, and prices of houses going down at the moment, which in a lot of areas, which people have invested crazy amounts of money. We're recording this from Brisbane, Logan, and it's not quite the same level of growth that you saw in Sydney and inner city Melbourne, but just I'm always stunned. You see a young couple who they've got 2 incomes, and then they spend $1.5 million on a home, which is going to be a rock around their neck for years and years and years. It's quite a different space, isn't it? It's I don't know. That's just me. Is that just me, or do you
No,
feel the
I
same
do.
too when
I
you're
do.
looking at the
I
debt?
mean, obviously, my husband and I, we're closer to 60 than we are to 50. So, there's no doubt when we got married, we bought a house for $80,000, which seems really ridiculous. And we moved over here 25 years ago and bought a house 1 block from the water for $140,000. But the reality, actually, Janeen, was that at the time, that was a big chunk of our income. At the time, our wages and our lifestyle was really relative to that money. And I can remember we had to have a $5,000 deposit, which people laugh about now because some people can earn that in a week, but you weren't earning that in the early 80s. We took 2 years to actually save that deposit with us both working before we had children. And when we saved it, I can remember signing those first papers thinking, how on earth are we going to pay back $74,000 and all this interest? Came to like 90 grand at the time. And now, of course, my kids laugh about that, because we just went yesterday to look at a house that one of my daughters is looking at buying, a do-up for $400,000. So they take Dad to see if he can do all the renos. And, the mortgages have got much bigger figures now. But I think actually it's way more relative than we realise. And I think that if we understand the principles of business and of money, it just continues to change and it continues to grow in dimensions, but the fundamentals always remain the same. So I think the millennials are just as empowered as we were. It's just different figures.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose when it's such a daunting figure compared to, as you said, what we paid for things. But then, I was telling people yesterday my first pay packet was $37 a week, and I was just so excited. I was overwhelmed with that. It was crazy money at that particular time.
Yeah.
Which, half that was for half an hour's work by the time I was finished working, which is just so different, isn't it? It's
Oh, for sure.
yes. Okay, all right, yeah. So, how do you encourage clients to change their habits about spending and advice that they can earn more? I suppose that's an important factor as well.
So it's pretty simple for me. My process is always this: let's be honest about where you're at, because I think when you're honest about that, then you can actually start to really look at it. So we always get them to get really honest about exactly what they make, what it costs them, how they create that income, the fluidity of that income. Because here's the thing: somebody can have an incredible product, but it can also be incredibly seasonal. People in Australia that create sunscreen can make money for 12 months of the year. If you take that product to Europe, you're making money for 5 months of the year because the conditions are different. So I get them to really look at their products and or their sources. If you're a life coach and you do a specific particular thing, then let's look at how sustainable that is and how to get you into the right market. So first of all, we look at what they've got and we break it down to the hardcore truth. And most of the time is you're lucky to have 10% of every dollar left for anything. And when they can actually face that, sit with it and process it, and then, of course, look at the fact that that doesn't create wealth, that doesn't create a retirement. And, the reality, Janeen, is that everybody is going to retire one day. And if you're under 60 years of age today listening to this podcast, you have a 90% chance you'll need to be self-funded. So if you're a woman who's 40 to 50 in your own business, you need to self-fund yourself. So if you're working in your business every year and putting nothing in your super, you're in trouble. Because the highest number of homeless people in Australia today is women over the age of 55, because they don't have the super, the marriage is broken up, it was all leveraged, and all of a sudden they're couch surfing, and they're crowd surfing to be able to find ways to make money.
I totally agree. I've come across that statistic a lot, and you may not find them necessarily on the street, but as you said, they're on somebody's couch or they're renting somebody's room as well. And it's such a sad statistics because, the women have most likely been working all of their careers and in some format, whether it's working at home or working out in the workforce, and they end up in that situation. It's quite a perilous situation as well. And my husband's retired, and he has quite a very, very healthy super. And I have worked all the way through, and not necessarily in roles that have paid a lot into super, but certainly 20 years as a GM, which was, that's when my super had the opportunity to build up. It's still only a third of his. And that's a big difference, isn't it? That between men and women as well, because we usually step out of the workforce for a period of time. And then when we come back in, as you said, if we're own business, we don't put money in the super, or if we're working part-time, we're just not earning enough to build it up. And it is such an important issue.
Absolutely. And I think, pay equity, which is, one of the things I would love to see corrected in my lifetime, definitely comes into that.
Yeah, and that is a very important factor. I think most people around the world now would agree, and particularly in Western society like Australia, that if you're doing the same job as somebody else, then you get paid the same amount as them, or you get paid on your skill base. It makes it that simple. It's just that a lot of the really high-paid jobs tend to be the high-risk jobs as well, and that's what men tend to do more than women. I think that's where a lot of that inequity comes in as well. I just have dealt a lot with mining and construction and that type of industries, and you just don't get a lot of women in those industries. Starting to come through, though.
Yeah, that's true. They are.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of topics like that as well. So you said 10% So all you end up was 10% of every dollar on average. So does that mean that you've taken out, that's with your wage taken out and your super taken out, and that 10% is just to, put away for the lifestyle that you want to live, the dream? Or do you still have to take those other things out of that 10%?
Normally when the clients come to me, most of the time, that 10% is what they're having to live off. It's taken 90% to run their business. And sometimes they have to forfeit the 10% to pay tax because they haven't got the logistics right, such as overheads. I think people in business think of overheads like a woman can think of a credit card. I'm always very mindful. I don't have credit cards. I have debit cards. Don't believe in credit cards. But I have a debit card because I'm mindful that when I use that, it's appearing in my bank the next day. So it's holding me really, really focused on what I'm spending. Whereas credit cards, they tend to just, it's money. Where's that come from? And then all of a sudden you get this bill at the end of the month. And, I've got girlfriends who, I spent $2,000. Stop using your credit card and use your debit card. You'll know how much you're spending. And so I find that most of the time it's not that they mean to be not running a good, successful business. It's just that they're not really hands-on about it. They're not realising that a product, if you make a product and it costs you $10 to make, you have to be able to sell that for $30 to $35. Now, if you're discounting that to $20 every day of the week to get sales, or you're wholesaling that at $20 and you're never getting to sell it at $35, then you already have an issue with the fact that that is costing you way more than it should. So you have to then dial back all your overheads. You would have to be working from home, warehousing from home to even break even. And people just don't have this education, which is why I'm so passionate about doing what I do, because, knowledge is great. When you have knowledge, you can change something.
No, totally true. And I know when the business that I was GM of, we had to have a 25% margin, and that was cost. That broke even. So everything above that was profit. But we knew that we had to have that 25% margin on everything because that covered all of the expenses in the business. And we were selling both low and high ticket items. So sometimes 25% was only 20 cents. But we knew the figures. The owner of the business I worked for, he knew his figures backwards. And it was really interesting when we would tender for major tenders, and we just walked away from a lot of them. And we know that the businesses that got the business couldn't sustain it, but we would walk away from it because we just went, no, you don't want to do what you just said, and you end up going out the back door, and you still want to be in business. And the business that I work for had been in business for nearly 30 years. So,
Sure.
Yeah, it's so important to know your numbers.
Absolutely.
And
to know when to walk away, to know when, okay, there's no profit in this, because it's one thing to be busy and to be creating an ideal that your business is flourishing, and it's another thing to be able to lock the doors at night knowing that you have created wealth and that you can sustain yourself into your retirement. And in Australia, we do get the two confused. And to save face, there's nobody ever wakes up tomorrow morning saying, I think I'd like to fail today. I think I'd like to actually just not do this well today. We all get up every day saying, we're going to do our best. We're in this. We are going for this. This is how it's working. And so, when we make some of these uninformed decisions and we end up in this corner, we get really caught and we get really stuck about it. And so that's why I'm saying, with more education through podcasts and working with people like you and I, when they learn this stuff, they don't back into that corner because they know when to walk away. They know when to renegotiate their value or their worth, when to pull more out of it,
I did a presentation last night, and I coach in sales training, and this is what it was about. And one of those people in the room, she knows she's not charging enough. She said, I win most of the bids, but I'm working my butt off. I'm working ridiculous hours. And often we don't value the time and hours that we put in. We don't see that as an expense. We just do the work. And that's one of the things I'm going to work with her is how to value her time better, because she's just going to end up totally exhausted, and she may have a lot of business coming through, but again, as we said, that's not sustainable because it really affects your health because of stress levels as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And women are great at dealing with stress and bottling stress and pushing stress down because, again, we're designed to create and to hold space and to create life. But here's the thing, they get to my age and their health is rubbish. And they start going to doctor
Yes.
to doctor to doctor. They start having all of these things. I mean, I have got 2 clients that are 57 years of age that have had nervous breakdowns at 57 because they've been doing that type of behaviour in their business for 6 years. And they've got to 57
Wow. Okay.
and they're now literally, 8, 9 years off retiring and they can't. And the sheer fact of realising that just caused this real internal conflict. And it's really sad to see because it was all about just restructuring and understanding. They both were life coaches. They weren't charging the right amount of money and they weren't actually resourcing how to get clients continuously. So it was a feast or a famine. They'd get 5 clients, then they'd have 2 months off. Well, you know what? If you're having 2 months off, that 5 clients has to sustain the 2 months. It does, that changes your pricing, and it's just knowing all of that stuff. It's life changing.
I had one of my reps that worked for me, but he was sort of subcontracted to us, and he was running first aid courses, and he was running them for I'll just pull a figure out. I think it was $97, and the company I was working for, we were running them for $147. And I said, you've got to get an extra 3 or 4 people in the course to get the same return as we would do. You've got to have 14. We'll have 10, and it took a long time for that penny to drop because he kept going, I'll keep discounting to get more clients. And I said, every time you discount, you've got to get extra clients. So it just doesn't work that way. And I've come across that with what I do as well. The prices I have on my training, I think is the right price for the amount of value that I offer. And I've done a discount today, and I never do that. It was just a Halloween thing. I thought I'll throw that out. But I never do it. I never have to do it. It's not a big deal. But I see people that run the same sort of training. Obviously, it's not the same, Tracy, because it's not me,
Yeah, true.
but it's the same sort of training, and they're doing it for a quarter of the price that I have it for. And I'm thinking I can put 4 people in the workshop, have a really intensive workshop where everyone gets huge value, and they've got to put 15 and try and fill the 15 seats instead because they're not seeing the value on what they're doing. And I think that's always been the thing for me is, no, I'd rather have less and do it well and be able to charge what I think I'm worth.
Yeah, for sure. Here's the thing. If you're going to show up in business and create a product or a service that is top quality, it deserves to be purchased at a top quality price. People aren't worried about finances as much as you would think. Baby boomers, yes, they still look at the bottom line, but after them, from me down, people are worried about quality because it's so easy to get a rubbish product from China bought over through one of the online stores for $4 only to have it devastatingly, embarrassingly rubbish. So people are savvy now. They're really savvy about how to spend money. And here's the thing. You don't have to discount your service. You just have to provide your service well enough for people to understand that was the value. And they'll show up every time.
Yep, that's exactly what I find. It's and because I do a bit of corporate training as well, corporates can see that value, I think, more so than individuals as well. I think that's the difference as well when they're looking at their own pay packet as opposed to the outcome as well. Again, it's how well you market that. Now, is it just women? I know, when I went through school, I loved mathematics, but it tended to be all the boys that did maths and got into those business type roles. Is it easier for men, or is it just that's a perception?
It's more and more actually becoming a perception, I think, because the reality is that we're all living in this world where we have to recognise that we're quite stressed and we have to address that. So the plus that men have, I believe, over women is that most of them are operating far more logically in the left, in that part of their brain. Like you said, that maths just comes a bit easier. So they're often more aware of where their business is at and what their business must charge. They're also, by definition of nature, a little bit more able to separate from the bottom line in regards to selling stuff to family, friends, having a sale frenzy and stuff like that, which is all quite emotive and really drawn to women. The amount of women that I find have started a business and then it's got a bit busy and so they've taken on their best friend, or their sisters come to work for them, and all of a sudden they now actually need to let them go, and it's very difficult to do. Whereas in a masculine role, that decision is often a little bit easier to make. So there's some of those dynamics definitely in play, but at the same time, not every man is wired to understand figures, and some men, their businesses are in just as much trouble.
Yes, yeah. I just and thank you for clarifying that as well, because I think it's a perception, as you said, and it certainly has changed, because I know I tend to actually, a lot of my clients tend to be accountants and bookkeepers. I don't know that's who have been drawing in lately, and they're mostly women, so they've gone through and have done those studies, and women, and they're looking at getting in their own business as well, so, and setting it up. Yeah, so they're definitely, well, what I'm coming across is a lot more is younger women who are into accounting. And I know when I went through school, there was two choices. It was nursing or teaching, and that was basically it. Yeah, quite different. Now, I always ask for some takeaway points that people can use to apply. And we've talked about the belief systems and the issues that people have, but what's a couple of takeaways and tools that people can apply or use in their business?
One of the takeaways I want to give people is that you started your business with a dream. That doesn't mean that you can or should do everything perfectly. So I'm a big believer in business having structure. If you look at any major corporation, Janeen, they would have both you and I on staff full-time doing our jobs. I would be running the finances, checking it, reporting. You would be doing sales every day. So narrow that down to a small business. There is definitely times you need to bring in somebody to look at your figures and to help you for a couple of months. Just read them and critique them. You need to bring in the salespeople. If you've got a product that isn't selling, you need to bring in a salesperson. So my first takeaway is, don't be afraid to invite people into your business on a 1, 2, 3, 4 month contract to help you, because if you stay in your dream, if you stay in your passion point, you will create and energize much quicker to success, but you still have to have all that other stuff in place. And why not have an expert do it for you, because they will do it in half the time and twice as well.
Great point. And that, because we sometimes, I know I've lost so much time trying to fiddle with things on my website or something, and then you end up just sort of throwing your hands in the air and getting someone anyway, whereas you just get the expert in straight away and get them to do the job. And the time I wasted on there, I could have been connecting with clients instead. Great point. Thank you for that.
No problem. I guess another...
So what else?
Another takeaway for me is always this fact. If you are going to be in business, make sure that it's something that creates for you a better quality of life than a job. I'm a skilled person, so when I go to work in a job, I exchange high money for my time. And I work my time and create a very high level of competency in that job, and they pay me really well for that. And then I get to take their money and create my life. So in my business, I do the same. I show up with high competency. I charge accordingly, and I get stuff done. I do it well for my clients. And then with that money, I get to create that lifestyle. And I don't know, sometimes people, it just upsets me when they think I'm going to go into business and I'm probably going to just work for half of what I was worth. Well, why would you? And in a job, we got super. So if you're in your business, you need to be creating super. You need to be really taking care of that whole dynamic of the complete life that you were getting somewhere else. Because here's the thing, if you're going to do something different, do it better. We don't, if you're going to start walking and then you decide you want to run, just start running. But, if you want to jump out and go into your business, your goal has to be having a better lifestyle with more money and more favour than when you were in a job, surely.
Yeah, that's the thing that you're doing it for. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Absolutely. And the third takeaway, please, Tracy.
I tell people this all the time. Money has no personality. It is a solid, inanimate object. So anything that is happening in your business is to do with your personality. And we can very quickly change what money does for you by looking at that and looking at your life. Because here's the thing. In my hands, money is extremely generous because that's who I am. I can't walk past a Surf Life-Saving jar. When I go to America and stuff, the kids laugh. They say, Mum, you're just setting the whole ratio for tipping for every other Australian just off the planet because, I know what they earn and I just can't equate it but here's the thing, in somebody else's hands, money might not be so generous because that's not their nature. But the reality is we're all still holding the same inanimate object. So it's never the money. Money is whatever you make it to be. It's also in my life. It's also a ability to fund and support my own life. But there's a whole part of my money structure now that's looking at retirement because of my age. I wasn't looking at it 30 years ago, obviously, because I didn't even think about it then. I had 4 under 5 and wasn't even thinking about it. When I started my business. Mm-hmm. So, it's always different, but money has no personality. You are your money. So anything that's happening, good or bad, it has to do with you. And if you just take the time to focus on that and look at that and talk to the right people, if it's not going in the right direction, you can turn it around very quickly because the money isn't actually the problem.
No, and that's a good reminder that it doesn't have personality. It's you with your personality, and it depends what you do with it. Oh, I love that. And you mentioned that you're going to London. You're speaking at an event too, aren't you? Well.
I'm speaking at the Women's Economic Forum, and I'm speaking about how to provide equity for all women. So how do we enable women who are financially behind the 8 ball from birth, who come from low socioeconomic homes, lives, countries, how do we allow them on a global stage to be able to earn the same as a woman who's born into a multi-million-dollar family? So that's what I'm speaking on.
Wow, that's a fascinating subject. It's something that I didn't even think about covering today, but we could have jumped on that as well. That's going to be really interesting. I'm sure that the audience is going to enjoy that. So how can people get in touch with you, Tracy, if they want to work with you?
Okay, the best way to do it is to contact me on my website, which is tracyhorton.com. And it's Tracy.
And Tracy's with an E.
Yeah, EYHORTON.com.
Okay, and I know you said you have a special an offer for anyone that listens through this and comes through.
Yeah, so normally what I offer for people that come to me and say, I don't know what's happening in my business, and a lot of the time they don't need long-term coaching. Sometimes they just need to know and make that decision. So I always offer for $7.97. I go to their business, I work with them face-to-face, for half a day, and then I compile a whole report and new KPIs and stuff. But because, Janeen, I'm a big fan of yours and I like you so much, I'm willing to offer a 20% discount to people on that. They're just going to have to use the code JV19. If they enter that, they'll get 20% off that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Tracy. And
Pleasure.
that's really helpful. I think, finding out what's going on in your business, I think it's probably is the most important step that you can take if you want to be able to have something that is not just ticking over, but something that is going to enable you to create your dream.
Yes, for sure. Knowledge is power. If you know, you can create the dream far easier and far safer for yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. And thank you so much for being on this episode of the We Are Women podcast, Tracy. It's just been such an interesting topic, and I think money is one of those things that we do put a lot of emotion into it, and it was a good reminder that it has no personality. So I want to thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure, Janeen. Pleasure working with you.
Excellent. And have a wonderful trip to London and enjoy the presentation and everything. Are you getting to holiday over there as well?
Well, I cannot lie. I am going to get on the bullet train after the conference and head to France for 48 hours of drinking great wine and coffee and doing no work at all. and then after that, I'm bumping back into here because I can't be away from the office for too long.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I had nearly 3 months there this year in Europe, and it was pretty special, actually. I keep dropping that, I had 3 months everywhere I get the opportunity to, but it certainly was a special time. Okay, thank you very much again. That's another episode of the We Are Women podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a review. A 5-star one is always wonderful. If you want to know a little bit more about any of the training that I've got coming up in the near future, please go to my website, which is janeenvosper.com, and just spelling that JANEENVOSPER.com. And look, have a check. You can get on and do a 20-minute free discovery call with me, and we can just chat about some stuff that might be going on in your business that I can help with, or I can direct you to someone like Tracy who can help with the financial part of it. And I do have a retreat coming up in Bali next year, and have a look at that. Just click on. So there's lots of things to go and see on the website. So thank you again. Thank you for listening. I really love that all my listeners sort of give me great feedback, and I will see you next episode of the We Are Women podcast. I'm Janeen Vosper, and bye for now.
So, do you feel stuck in a rut in business? Visit speechperfect.com.au and download Janeen's free ebook to avoid the 5 most common stumbling blocks women face in business. It's jam-packed, full of tips to overcome the barriers that could be holding you back from the success that you dream your business will be. We would love you to leave a review of today's episode and share this podcast with other women in need of entrepreneurial inspiration. Subscribe to the next episode now and join the We Are Women community.